Welcome to Like Nobody's Business, the podcast that goes beyond the bottom line and reaches deep into the heart of what really matters for women entrepreneurs, leaders, and founders today. I'm Emily, your host and founder of WMNûp, a global movement community, an infinite upward spiral of visionary, resourced women entrepreneurs. I'm also a business strategist and leadership coach and a 6- and 7-figure business mentor for women entrepreneurs with over a decade of experience serving women across industries to build regenerative, intentional, and innovative business ecosystems that are transforming the world for good, without sacrificing profitability, our integrity with our values, or what matters most along the way. Here, we know that business isn't just about commerce or consumerism. It's about culture and policy. It's about challenging the systems that keep us all from rising, amplifying solutions that move us forward, and reclaiming what it is truly our business to care about as women today, at a time where many systems and structures are in dire need of recalibration for more equitable futures for all. Each week, I'll sit down with values-driven women leaders, activists, authors, researchers, and innovators who are on the front lines of shaping the conversations that matter most, issues of equity, upward mobility, and dismantling systems of oppression within ourselves, our work, and the world. Because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. And these challenges, they're not just someone else's problem. They're our business. And together, we're here to rise, resist, and reimagine the future. This is our space to facilitate and engage in the conversations women need to be having. It's time to woman up, get uncomfortable, be brave, and take bold action that blazes new trails, both in your business and beyond. So pull up a chair, get ready to be activated, and let's dive in together. We've got this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to be here today with my guest, Keegan Tatum. He makes videos online about political psychology, and I saw some of his content and I was like, thank you for putting the research behind my random observations. And I didn't even know that this was a field. And I'm just so excited to have you on the show to speak about some of these big questions and things that we're seeing in political psychology through your lens, and having your genius on the show to contribute to this conversation that's ever evolving. So welcome.
Hey, I'm really happy to be on. When I initially saw you DM me, I'm like, oh, but I'm a man and I don't know anything about business. And then I start listening to your podcast. I'm like, oh, these are my people. All right, I'm at home.
Mm,
So I'm very happy to be
yes,
on. Thank you for having me, Emily.
I'm so happy to have you. And you're in California, is that
That I
right?
am. That or the moon,
Northern?
depending
Yeah.
on what visual you're getting, if any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the Bay
Amazing.
Area.
Okay, cool. And first, I'm just so curious, like, how did you, because I got a bachelor's in psychology, but never did I hear the term political psychology. And that just really lit something in me when I saw your account and your content, because I was like, oh my God, there's a field for this. And this is what I've been like, weirdly, my brain has been trying to synthesize all of this confusion and everything that's been happening since, well, before, but the things that I've felt and observed post election, and trying to make sense of all of it. And so I'm wondering, has this been a field for a long time? Tell me more about like how you got into this specific specialization.
What's cool about political psychology is you can come at it from your angle, the psychology angle. You can come at it from my angle, which is a political science angle, or you can come at it from the OG book on political psychology's angle, which is actually a sociology angle. So the OG book is called The Authoritarian Personality by Adorno et al., and it came out in 1950. And it was basically a response to what the hell happened with that Hitler guy?
Oh, wow. Okay, so that makes so much sense. So it is this intersection point is what I'm hearing
Yes.
between these different fields, which is really cool and one of my favorite things to explore, because I was also recently looking into maybe I should do a PhD in sociology, and that seems to bring all these things together that I'm interested in and curious about right now. And That's really cool to hear. So this is a field that, and did you specifically study this? Was this your intent going in? Or did it, like, how did it emerge for you personally?
Originally, when I went to university, I went to Syracuse because Syracuse has good broadcasting school, and I wanted to do baseball play-by-play commentary.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
hit my next level of political awakening not deep into that first year of university. I'm like, I can't spend my life talking about baseball because baseball just doesn't matter. Like outside of
Yeah.
when baseball integrated in 1947, baseball just doesn't matter to the wider world. It's a distraction. It's entertaining. It's fun. And
Yeah.
when I had the political like phase part two, I just had to talk about politics. So
Hmm.
at some point in undergrad, I got into a little bit of what are some personality differences. But it wasn't until grad school that I realized, wow, this is something you can really study. And I took a course on it and I've been reading on it ever since I graduated from Columbia is where I did my master's. So the
Cool.
seed is probably a bit earlier in life.
Awesome. And what was that like? What was the timing of that political awakening that you're speaking about? What was happening in the world and in politics at the time that really just hooked you?
Phase one was when I was 14 and
Okay.
Obama was running in the primary. I actually
Yeah.
went to his first inauguration, which was an amazing experience to go to DC. It was the coldest I've ever been. And if anyone knows about central New York winters, okay, I was colder in DC. It was that brutal. But
Wow.
that was phase one. And then I became disaffected, alienated, something negative, when I realized that Obama was abandoning universal health care. That just really drove me nuts. And I think that's what really started getting me into more progressive, lefty, radical space. And then when I first got into college, I was like, okay, got to watch the news every day. It's going to be part of the job, right? And I was very frustrated with corporate media. So I started going to more independent media. Tom Harbin's got a really great radio program. He was somebody who has a really historical lens. And that's what got me into phase two. And then I'd say the political psychology would really be phase three.
Cool. Okay. And what do you like? How do you make money doing this right now? Like, what does
Um,
that look like? Are you like, who hires a political psychologist? Is that part of political strategy? Like, where does that plug into this? Or is it simply research? Or walk me through what does that look like?
if you find a job, let me know. I've always wanted to do media, so I always wanted to just
Ah,
explain things. And originally I was like, ooh, historical context, right? Because what really got me into understanding why I should be a progressive is looking at history, you just see that conservatives are always on the wrong side of history. Now, that's not to say liberals and the left and all that are always correct. Sometimes
right.
everyone's wrong, just for
Yeah.
varying degrees. But it's not just little things. It's like conservatives were against women voting, conservatives were against black people. I was going to say voting, but like anything, just they were pro-slavery at the time. They were pro-segregation. They created the segregation laws. Like everything terrible. All of the workplace safety laws, they opposed that. They opposed the minimum wage. And now I've lost track of where I'm going with this. Anyway, conservatives are always wrong throughout history, and that's, I think, what really got me towards there must be something weird about how they think. And for me,
Mm.
it's just about communicating this stuff that's so interesting. I remember you have editing, so I can take a moment to think. Sorry, I really lost my train of thought there.
No, you were saying there's something interesting or different about
You were
the way
asking
that
about
they
jobs.
think.
Yeah, you were asking.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, and because I've always wanted to do political communications, I feel like I have to contribute something to the conversation, and
Mm,
political psychology is my way of doing it. My job is to just try to keep building a platform to talk about political
mhm.
psychology,
Cool.
and then working on
Awesome.
the side because the TikTok doesn't make me enough money quite yet.
Maybe it will. I feel like there's hope. Or at least another platform. Maybe a podcast. You should have a podcast. Do you have a podcast?
Oh, not yet. I
Oh man, that
okay.
would be
Okay,
great for
this
you.
is just for you and I. But I am
Insider
actually
info.
I had to take down my other screen behind me, which is like a
Mhm.
New York City street, because I'm doing a show on Sex in the City, doing over analyzing Sex in the City.
Oh,
So that will
fun.
be my other job. I
Cool. I
just
love
love
it.
making media, man. I just can't help but love throwing
Yeah.
my weirdo ideas out there.
It's working for you, and I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we think about the primary differences between how conservatives and I guess we'll say liberals, progressives tend to think. What are those primary differences? I know you have a lot of content about this from different angles, but what, if we were to try to sum it up a little bit, what are those differences?
For the sake of easy language, let's just use liberal and progressive and the left
Cool.
interchangeably, okay? There's
Yeah.
my lefty brain, which is saying don't equate leftists and liberals, but whatever, we're just
Yeah.
going to do it,
Yeah.
okay? So the primary difference is emotional. One of the things I really want people to understand is that we don't come to our political conclusions rationally, okay? We didn't just sit there and read a
Mhm.
book and think the data and history indicate that we should go towards these, but no. For the most part, this is perfectly illustrated in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. The emotions come first, and then
Mhm.
we rationalize our emotions second. Fear is the base emotion. Conservatives are more ruled by their fears. Now fear is an essential thing for survival, but it
Mhm.
can get toxic, right? It's reasonable to fear climate change. It is reasonable to fear somebody with a firearm looking angrily towards you.
Mhm.
It is not so rational to fear transgender people existing. It is not so
Right.
rational to fear immigrants coming over. Now, that's an interesting one because there is that in group, out group tribalism preference. But of course, if you look at the data, immigrants commit crime at a lower rate than native born Americans.
Right.
There's nothing really to fear. But the rationalization can't always overpower the fear. So
Mhm.
fear would be the number one thing. And what's interesting is you can actually scan people's brains and try not to be too essentialist here, but on average, conservatives have a larger amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain that responds to fear. And they also have a more active amygdala. So when you keep this in
Mm.
mind, when you listen to any conservative speak, almost all of their arguments come down to fear in some sort of way. Even a lot of the selfish ones, they're like, oh, I want them to cut my taxes. I think that
Mm.
there's a fear in that of somebody's going to take something from me, as if life is some zero sum game, which is
Yeah.
ironic because they think capitalism should keep growing forever, but that's a whole. But there's
Yep.
other emotions too. So when I was listening to the most recent podcast you have up, it was about gender, and you're talking about transgender people, and it's the primary reason why people are transphobic is an oversensitivity to disgust. You can go to
Mm.
studies that just talk about those horrible bathroom laws, and it's just an oversensitivity to disgust. And again, disgust, really important. If you're out in the wild, you need to know what animal to eat and what not to eat. You don't want to be eating rotten food. That could be bad because we have a spectrum within humanity where people are very low sensitivity to fear or disgust or what have you. And then there's other people with a high sensitivity. And the people with a higher sensitivity are like, I don't like trans people. There's no rational argument from like a, this is what's best for people perspective for being
Right.
transphobic. It's just the feeling
I
of
don't like
disgust.
it.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like it. And I want the
Freaks me
government to stop
out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is difficult when it comes to actual legislation because here in South Carolina, my one of my Congress people, a representative,
You have Nancy
Nancy
Mace, right?
Mace. What a treat for us. Oh my God. Yeah, so she's like making all these laws to quote unquote protect women when she just came out with this big reveal of I have discovered accidentally my ex-fiance was filming women doing crazy sex stuff and like all of this weird stuff. But that's, and his business partners were connected to that little scandal, right? So that's four privileged white guys in South Carolina. None of them are brown immigrants. None of them are transgender people. None of these crimes happened in a bathroom. None of the things that she has ever spoken about protect women against these kinds of crimes. And what I'm noticing and what makes me so like crazy is what I'm seeing on, we'll say on the conservative side of the aisle is like conclusions and things that people are starting to talk about. Like she did this whole speech on the House floor about this thing. I don't know if you saw it, But I was like, okay, so you're saying you're afraid of men. And if you'd like to have that conversation, we've been talking about that for 60 years. Welcome to the left. I don't
Yes.
understand. Like, why? The thing that's driving me crazy right now is like the observation I'm making is why is the right acting like these things are like revolutionary ideas that are new when they're the same things, like the whole Maha movement. I'm like, we've been talking about this for 60 years on the left. I don't understand, or longer. Like, what is going on? But then they're like co-opting these movements like Me Too or clean eating or even Michelle Obama's whole campaign when Barack was in the White House about helping kids let's move and planting gardens and eating clean and all this stuff. And it's what is going on? I start to feel like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? And then I start to think all of these things that I've been like an early adopter in my generation of folks when it comes to these sort of cycles of like sustainable agriculture and like all of these things. Like I've been thinking about that, talking about it, studying it, chose my college based on it, like all of that stuff like early. And I'm 32, about to be 33 now. So like those ideas, like people who are new to that concept are now like pretending that this is like the craziest thing or like the best thing and the solution to make America healthy. Meanwhile, I'm like, guys, didn't you hear? We were talking about that at least a decade plus ago. And also, all of that stuff has been completely debunked. Like, all the stuff that we were like, maybe this is a thing. It's, oh yeah, the science actually happened. And here's what it
20 years
said.
ago.
This is like not, this is like such a non-issue and a distraction from everything that actually matters right now. It's so bizarre. And I'm like, what is happening? Do you have any insights on that? Like, why are
Yeah.
they so late to the game, half a century late? And I'm like, what? Like, why are you acting like this is news to anyone?
And if we had lived in 1850, we'd be saying the same thing about abolition of slavery, right? This is
Ah!
just a thing. So,
What is happening?
so part of it is open-mindedness versus closed-mindedness education, right? More educated people
Hmm.
tend to be more liberal because when you know more about the world and you have a more nuanced way of thinking, you're more likely to be on the left.
Right.
That's part of it. Part of it is conservatives are more closed-minded, so they just don't input new ideas. When I think about closed-mindedness, I think we all jump to like conservative grandpa who doesn't want to try something new, some new experience.
Hmm.
But man, is it ever present with new ideas. Oh my God. When it comes to
Hmm.
Nancy Mace, my cynical side is she's probably a narcissist or a sociopath, and she's just using this to attain more power. That's my baseline assumption with these politicians.
Hmm.
So
Unfortunately, because you have, this is the thing that also is crazy, is like you have the opportunity to actually impact and affect positive change. Like, why are you not using it? Like,
they're
it's
incapable
so
of thinking that
weird to
way.
me. I'm
Yeah.
so confused by all of it. Like, I understand, but I'm also like, my brain won't let me allow me to believe that because it completely shatters my worldview.
So I'd like to get to the deeper morality. Let's take the
Yeah.
narcissism out of it. Let's just say that everyone is being honest with what they really believe.
Hmm.
Ellipsis.
Yeah.
So our values are just different. If you were to go down to the core, like why do we believe in universal healthcare? Why do we believe in, you know, equal access to whatever? It's because we fundamentally believe in maximizing freedom and human happiness. When you get right down to it, everything about the left comes down to those two things in my mind. When it
Hmm.
comes to the right, it's a bit different. And because they're more susceptible to fear, a lot of their morality is based in what they're comfortable with and how they
Mm.
feel safe. And they assume because of their closed mindedness, they project that onto other people and they project that you have the same way of thinking that they do. This is part of the reason why conservatives are such hypocrites. It's because they can't
Mm.
understand a way that you think differently. Fundamentally, you ever had it? One of the most frustrating things you ever had it where a conservative's just like, oh, you just assumes you're selfish and all of your motivations. Like, no, you really don't understand how I think, do you?
No, yeah.
And when it comes to something like trans people, They just feel uncomfortable and unsafe. And so they want it banned. They're not thinking about the well being of the trans person, they're thinking about their own selfish emotional desires.
Honestly, it should be illegal to be a conservative at this point. Like the amount of harm that is done through that way of thinking and legislating and leading, and even just like the hate speech, like the language that's used is so harmful because it isn't just, I just was looking at the pyramid of harm. Is that what it's called? Like where it's like the base layer is ideas, and then the next layer is words, and then the next layer is actions, so on and so forth. You can all Google this. But this pyramid of harm, and it's like they don't understand for some reason that the words you say have impact and hold weight and can create conspiracy theories, harm to other people, more hate for already marginalized groups. It's divisiveness, violence, like all of these things. And I just don't, it's so frustrating because I'm like, okay, yes, this is their worldview, but like, how do you not get it? It's almost an immediate boomerang effect as well. And it still doesn't, like, the dots do not connect for them. And that's like crazy making. And then this whole thing, like, I love that we're talking about the hypocrisy of it because I've been thinking about that so much. Like, how is it possible that there is so much? Is the hypocrisy the point? Do they have to know that what they're saying and then what they're doing and then what they say later is so incredibly hypocritical? And they have to understand that we see that, right? But no, that's not how
No,
it works
this is such a
somehow.
big question, isn't it? Are they clueless? Are they clueless? So there's two things I want to respond with it, and that is that in a way, we're falling guilty of the same thing they're doing, which is we're projecting our mindset onto them. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they could say, "You don't get it. Those make people make me feel uncomfortable. Don't you understand? We're supposed to hurt them." I think that a lot of us on the left underrate. That's the point. The point
Mm-hmm.
is to harm other people. We're a vicious species, man. Look at what we were like in medieval times. Look at the Mongol conquest. There's a certain portion of our species that just likes power, likes harming others. And we haven't evolved out of that yet, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, oh man, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about because there's projection bit. This is why I need scripts. Hold on, let me get a water. Can you remind me of what you were saying outside of, oh, the obliviousness and
Yeah,
do
like
they
they
know?
have to know that they're contradicting themselves and being completely hypocritical, but I think they don't apparently, which is crazy. And I think
Mm,
I saw a piece of your content, a reel or something about the hypocrisy and about how they actually don't have that level of self-awareness somehow.
yes. So conservatives on average, I really want to keep emphasizing on average.
On average.
Yes. Again, it reminds me of your last podcast where he was talking about gender differences. So on average, men are taller, but that's on average. So
Mhm.
on average, people on the left have much more emotional intelligence. It's actually a stronger predictor than cognitive abilities, the more classic intellectual abilities that we think about. And
Mhm.
one of those emotional abilities is self-awareness. So why is it the conservatives, especially the men, Jesus Christ, they're like, "Oh, dude, men aren't emotional, bro. Men are so logic driven." And it's you are the most
You're the
fearful,
most
angry,
scared.
yes,
Yeah,
and disgust-ridden person. Dude, come on.
those are
And
emotions.
and I always wonder the certain sliders on how much one is affecting any one individual person.
Yep.
Could be a lack of self-awareness. Could be that they're trying to BS themselves. They're trying to convince themselves, "Oh, no, I'm not really emotionally driven. People on the left are just as hypocritical as I am." And part of it is they just don't care. Certain conservatives
Mm.
just don't care about the truth. It's amazing when you talk with particularly older conservatives because they start letting the guard down sometimes. And I remember talking with
Mm.
one, you'll never guess their race and gender. You'll just never guess it. A conservative in America. And and he was like, "Oh yeah, maybe you're right." And it's like I knew from what he was saying that he knew deep down I was right, but he just couldn't change his mind. partially due to
Mm.
closed-mindedness, partially due to the sunk cost fallacy of I've been a conservative all these years, I can't go back on it now, can't admit I was wrong now.
Right.
And another level is
Yeah.
they just don't care. If they
Mm.
cared, they would change their minds. If they cared enough about other people, they would have done the research. And by the way, I would say the same thing about people that don't participate at all. If they cared
Yep.
about other people enough, they would have done the research. I know that having a kids and how much we work outrageous hours in America, but everyone has the time to educate themselves. Everyone has the time to
Hmm.
challenge their views. Some people just
Yeah.
don't do it.
Right.
Everyone
That's
is
the
challenged at some
craziest.
point by their people.
Yep.
It's whether they have the emotional abilities to accept it or not.
Yeah. The thing that's wild to me in this whole post-election, what do we call that? Like a
Dumpster fire.
an analysis. Yeah, that too. Like the post-mortem of what happened
I wish we were doing more
is
of that, honestly.
is okay, we all have a phone for
Wow.
the most part. All these people, they get their information somewhere, right? They have a phone, a TV. Most people at this point in America have a little tiny computer that's a phone in their pocket with them everywhere. And when you hear something that sounds weird, all you have to do is Google it. Not that difficult. We have AI, we have ChatGPT. It doesn't even require much effort at all, but you have to care and you have to be willing to like think, huh, that sounds off. Let me fact check. But the other crazy thing that I learned is like people in this country are, the illiteracy is high. Only what, a quarter, maybe a little more than that, of the voting populace even knows and can name the three branches of government. Like all of this has blown my mind because I'm trying to understand. So I'm educating myself. So liberal, so progressive, so lefty of me.
How dare you
Like giving
need
a
to learn
shit.
new things?
Oh my God, learning so many new things. Um,
That makes you an elitist, by the way.
it's,
Not
you know
if
what? A
elitism
coastal
isn't wealth.
elite. You
Yeah.
know what? Yeah. And you and me right now are having a very privileged conversation because we're very like Ivy League, blah, blah, blah. We'll say that too. You can have that at us. However,
It's this conflict, it's this conflation of the people that are
yeah,
smarter than me that make me feel inferior versus
right.
actual people with power.
Yes. And also, okay, so this whole weird argument, like the elitist left, blah, 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 the more educated people, it's, wouldn't you like we're all
Why
starting,
are you
I
not
think, to
striving?
gaslight ourselves into being like, wait, am I crazy? Because, and then you realize, no, I'm on the side of the scientists, historians, psychologists, experts in everything. What is happening? And how are there that many people who willfully do not care and do not care about truth, but then at the same time have been fed this message? This is the most confusing part, this like propagandized message that they are the only ones who are thinking critically and they're anti-establishment and they're blah, 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 by just parroting like really unpopular or hateful, anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic BS that's been like bred out almost. And there's this resurgence of these horrible ideas that we've already evolved past. And then they're like, this is so original and cool. And this is so not mainstream and so punk rock to be a fucking homophobe or something. It's just so weird. And I'm like, that's not critical thinking. Just because you say something that is like basically like parroting propaganda, whether it's Russian propaganda or US MAGA propaganda,
Corporate.
just because you're saying like something that's unpopular does not make you like edgy or like interesting or educated or like you're not having an astute like revelation here. You're just saying stuff that we've already decided. Yeah, that doesn't help anyone, actually. We've moved beyond. It's crazy. Okay, that wasn't like a question, but we'll
No, but
just
there's a lot to talk
chat
to.
about it.
So, so one of the first things you were talking about is you can just look stuff up.
Mm.
Unfortunately, not everyone has that impulse. And most people, and you and I are guilty of this sometimes too, everyone listening is guilty of this sometimes too, is we want to challenge the ideas that our gut intuition is. Some people just don't have that kind of intuitive intelligence. Most people don't have media literacy. Why are we not teaching this in schools?
Right.
But there's also the phenomenon of low effort thought, of
Mm.
mental laziness. And mental laziness not only correlates, but promotes conservative views. If you look at anything, look at racism in America. What is easier for a lazy mind to understand? That
Mm.
hundreds of years of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and the war on drugs and the underfunding of public education within predominantly black neighborhoods leads to economic outcomes that are just unconscionable, frankly. Or
Hmm.
there's just something different about them. What's easier
Yeah.
for a lazy mind to understand? And so
Cultural
much of what,
differences.
yeah,
Yeah.
culture,
Oh my
air
God.
quotes. But so much of what you were talking about of like oh, dude, I'm so like edgy and countercultural and critical thinking because I go against the mainstream, bro. On one level,
It's so weird. I'm like,
I know, right?
why is this back? Like, I thought we got rid of this crap. What's going on? Yeah.
It's like a toxic version of something that's healthy. It's
Yeah.
healthy to criticize cultural assumptions, to criticize the powerful, to criticize mainstream media narratives.
Right.
However, the way that they take it is in a very toxic, I think, insecurity driven way, right? They want to be
Totally.
told that they're actually the special ones. No, no, those educated people, no, those much more intelligent, much more educated people, they're actually the ones that are brainwashed. You
Yeah.
are the special one that's smart enough to see through it. Education isn't some achievement you haven't gotten yet. It's a brainwashing institution.
Hmm.
So much of the messaging is you're special, you're different, you're not a loser.
And is that, oh God, I'm just so interested. We haven't even gotten to the whole white women thing that we planned to talk
Yes.
about initially, but it's so interesting. I feel like we could I want to talk to you for many more hours,
I'm happy to
just
come on again.
offline as well, or
Yeah.
not on the podcast for the part two. But I think, it's so interesting that from a messaging perspective, like you were saying, you're special, you're actually smart, you're able to see through it. Meanwhile, these people cannot read. It reminds me of there was this situation where Neil deGrasse Tyson, there was some guy who went on Joe Rogan's podcast and was like, I discovered that this actually is not real. I can't remember what it was, if it was like time or something. And he like
Yeah, yeah, a little
sent
bit of
this science. Yeah,
beforehand.
something happened. Yeah, probably. And he like sent the science to Neil deGrasse Tyson and he wrote him back and took time to thoughtfully write him back and say, this is a really interesting assumption. You need to do this here's what the research already says. This is really a great start of a theory, but unfortunately, and the guy was like so pissed. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson did this sort of like response video breaking down what happened. And he was like, this is called like a peer review. This is what we
Yes.
do in the field and it's not meant to be taken as like an offensive thing. This is like actually part of the scientific method and like process of how we refine data and theory and get closer to truth. What I find so interesting is like all of that is happening, and somehow there's also this, like we're saying, like it's all getting so convoluted where they think that they're thinking critically on the right. They think that they are enlightened in some way. Meanwhile, every actual metric is the opposite. What is going on? What is your take on that? We talked about it a little bit already, but like I just saw a clip from Jesse Waters, who like makes me ill to even watch him, the Fox
Ugh.
News anchor. And he was like, this is guerrilla warfare. On the left, by the time this person posts it, and then Joe Rogan podcasts about it and it gets to Fox News, like millions of people have seen it and heard this idea. And what we know about mis and disinformation is once it's out there, it's very difficult to reel that back in or make a correction later because you're not guaranteed to get it to all the people who heard that thing. The litter boxes in schools,
Oh
that
God,
kind of
that one.
thing.
Yes.
It's like all you had to do was Google it and you can see this has been disproven. And like all of these teachers or school administrators have responded and said, like, this has become a huge problem in this misinformation campaign has created a distraction from us being able to even do our jobs because parents are calling us and they're concerned that this is actually real and happening in their children's classroom. Well, like,
I think there's two routes
why?
to trying to answer this, right? So there's the why
Okay.
do elites want this? And then there's
Mm.
why do we, as like normal people, believe this crap? So
Okay.
the
Yes.
why do
Great.
we believe this crap is frankly down to some really basic human stuff, which is we suck at admitting when we're wrong. We're just not good at
Mm.
that as a species. Our brain is not meant to make the most rational decision possible that considers everyone. Our brain is meant to protect us. Our brain is meant to keep us safe. Our brain is meant to keep us from harm. And to a certain extent, that's like emotions. So, why do
Mhm.
people suck at harsh truths? Because our brain is meant to protect us from harmful things. And some people just don't have the emotional strength to get through that,
Mhm.
or they don't care about others enough to do
Mm.
that.
Mhm.
I think that insecurity, which is the big subsection of fear. Fear is the root of almost all bad human behavior. My mom taught me that very early on. And man, was she right. Because
Mhm.
it's the insecurity of, God, how many of those Trump supporters are just losers? I
A
don't mean to be a
lot.
dick about it, but so many of them are losers, right?
Yeah, not all,
Not all.
but there
No, some of
are.
them are rich, very lonely, cynical. I don't care about anyone else. I just want my tax cuts. Sure. But people our age, these dudes,
Yeah,
like, they're not the cream of the crop, okay?
right.
And they just want to not feel like they're a loser, or they want to not feel like they're inferior. We have
So
a
it's
hard time.
avoidance versus pursuit,
Oh
like
my God.
approach versus avoidance,
Oh my
right?
God. You just took the research paper I just read out of my brain. That was amazing.
Really?
Yes. Okay.
Oh.
So conservatives are much more avoidance based, and that
Mm.
includes emotions, right? So the moron dudes, they're like, oh, dude, men are not as emotional. Avoiding your emotions, pretending you don't have them, bottling them up, that doesn't mean you don't have them. That doesn't mean you're not
Right.
completely influenced by them, right? But they want to avoid it, just
Mm.
like they want to avoid immigrants, avoid trans people, avoid feminism, whatever.
Hey, love, it's Emily. I'm interrupting this podcast episode really fast just to tell you something that's a secret I forgot I was keeping and didn't mean to keep from you, which is that we actually have a free space for you to dive into at WMNûp called Calibrate. I was asked recently if we have a monthly option or a trial to test out the community before joining us for a full year. We don't, and we've actually tried that before, and ultimately we made the choice to not offer it because it was actually a disservice and antithetical to our teachings, values, offerings, and integrity of our space, which is truly founded on transformational, deep, long-term relationship building and community participation and engagement, both of which require commitment. Because actually, all transformational change, evolution, and growth requires the precedent of commitment. That being said, I know that you want to make sure that your investment will be aligned and that the work that we do at WMNûp is the right fit for you and your business at this point in time. And if you haven't already felt that through listening to this podcast, Calibrate is the perfect way to kind of test it out. And we solved this problem just a few months ago and admittedly have not been too vocal about what that pathway looks like for you. So I'm popping into the podcast today to let you know about it and let you know that we've built this entire free space for you inside Calibrate on our Circle platform, which is where all of our other programs and services are offered as well. So for those of you who are curious about becoming a member of the community or maybe applying to one of our mastermind experiences, Momentum if you're growing to 6 figures plus, or the Leadership Mastermind if you're scaling from multiple 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond, this free space will support you to plug into our frequency, our vibes, our ethos at Woman Up, to begin to calibrate up to your next Woman Up moment and initiate your infinite upward spiral of evolution and a new way of leading, growing, and scaling a regenerative business ecosystem with intention, innovation, and impact. Once you're inside, you'll receive free access to an amuse-bouche of resources to help you woman up, including our juicy training videos and masterclasses, including our 3-part Infinite Upward Spiral masterclass and our Visionary masterclass, our business ecosystem template that you can plug into any project management tool that you're already using, like Asana, Trello, Monday, Notion, whatever you like to use, and a training video from me walking you through exactly how to use it to get organized in the back end of your business. We also have some incredible replays of our 3-day Big Visionary Energy virtual conference for female founders that we hosted in October, which is a real incredible activation and virtual conference that is self-paced and you can go through in your own time, in your own way. You'll also get access to our events calendar for non-members. We have a separate event calendar inside the community for our paid members. But think live trainings and virtual happy hours. Some events will be free, others will be paid. All of them happen virtually and live inside of our platform for so much ease. And you'll have the ability to submit your questions for me to answer on an upcoming solo episode of our podcast. So what do you do if you love the way that all sounds? Jump to the show notes and click that link to join Calibrate and get yourself plugged into our ecosystem. It's time to have your next Woman Up moment. I'm so excited to see you in there and to serve you and support you in this way. There is a plethora of resources in there. And once you're ready, once you already know that this is the space for you, we invite you to jump up into the community for just $197 a month or $19.70 for the full year and get access to our quarterly in-person events called Woman Up Weekends. They're 2 days each. This year, we're going to be taking them all across the US, which is really exciting. So come join us. We'd love to have you. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always send me a direct message on Instagram at Emily in Your Business or at Woman Up, spelled WMNûp. Back to the episode.
Avoid anything that they don't like, are afraid of, or feel disgust around, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then,
or can't, and caveat under that fear subcategory here, like anything they feel they can't control, because that is scary to feel out of control of something, which is like encompasses all of those different motivations.
perfect. No notes. Out of control? Absolutely. That's part of why they don't like change, is because even
Right.
if the status quo sucks, at least
It's
they know where they
unknown.
stand within the hierarchy, right? But and you're right, and people on the left are more approach based, there's a more avoidance based. So that I just wild. I just read that paper.
Oh, you'll have to send it to me.
There's actually 2 of them that are pretty good.
Oh,
Why do the elites want this? Let's get real. A lot of these Jesse Waters types, they're narcissists. They don't care about the truth. They care about money and power and status and how many people adore them. And
do they
fascist,
are they aware that what they're spewing is complete lies, misinformation? Like Elon on X, for example, like his own AI was like, you're the top spreader of misinformation,
yes,
like crazy. But are these people, like, they have to know, they're smart enough. They're people who, I don't know, or has like religion co-opted their brain. Not all religion, but the version of Christianity that's
prevalent.
plays on and exploits that fear more, because that's also a different thing. There are these like factions of even religion that are like much more loving, less avoidant, and all of that.
Yeah, I got a church
So
2 blocks away from me that says a big ceasefire now and a big
yeah,
pride banner. Of course, I live in a very progressive area, so maybe this isn't too surprising.
yeah.
Okay, I think that your question would actually better be directed at a narcissism expert. Because I come at political psychology from a political science angle, I don't want to go outside of what I know. I have experience with a narcissist. That doesn't mean I'm an expert in it. But
Well, we
I
did just have one on last
exactly, and she was really
2
interesting.
weeks
It
ago.
was two,
She
two,
was great.
yeah.
Yeah, I should have
And she,
asked her this.
she talked about covert narcissism, which I have no familiarity with, but my dad was the classic Trump tier narcissist. So
Oh,
it was an
even
interesting
better.
listen. So Do they know that they're BSing? I think that they project that, oh, none of this matters, man. Psh, whatever, man. This is just my job. This is the way I get money and fame. Sean Hannity, he doesn't believe anything. I've heard
Mm.
reports that he has absolutely no belief system. It is just money and fame. And I
It
think that
is
they,
so difficult to understand that
yes,
as someone who has a belief system and values and like all of those things that probably
empathy.
most people listening to this have. It's just so confusing to me.
And getting back to
God.
projection, I think they
Yeah.
project, like most people on the right, they project you're just as selfish, team playing, dishonest hacks as they are. I know it, but like we also have a hard time understanding their hierarchical views, right? Like we have a hard time
Hmm.
understanding like certain people are just better. So the other reason why the elites want us to think all this BS is
Hmm.
ideological. Fascism requires you to be deliberately anti-empiricism, and as does religion. So in order to maintain those views, you have to reject reality. This is something that
Mm.
was big within the Nazi movement, was
Right.
anti-intellectual, anti-empiricism. Empiricism being hard evidence,
Data. Hmm.
data, observations. You wanted to get to
Well,
why are white women upholding this fascist crap?
yes. Yes. And so many of them, more than you would think. And sometimes post-election, there were people in my audience who I'm like, if you even interacted with me once, you would know this is not okay with me. There was like a brief moment where I started speaking out about things and people like unfollowed, which is totally fine. By all means, please, thank you for doing that work for me.
If you're too weak to handle the truth, sorry, I'm just not the content creator for you.
Or I'm not the coach for you. This
Yeah.
isn't the space for you. We don't gaslight each other. I'm not building a community based on lies, propaganda, fascist ideology, etc. There is no hierarchy within the structure that I've created for a reason, because we're literally building a new model, the way that things are organized in the spaces that I create and lead. It's literally like the antithesis of what you're trying to uphold. Like we're literally dismantling those oppressive systems and creating a more liberatory one, like for us to exist within. And it's like circular and equal and all of that. So, yes, let's talk about what is it specifically about white women, what's happening in us psychologically, like why. I have some armchair theories on this, but I'm curious to hear your actual research and empirical perspective.
Yeah. Let me take a drink one sec.
Okay.
I wanted to wait because this water bottle is super loud. Okay, so we should keep in mind, just like how, let me try that again. Okay, so we should keep in mind that women have the same tendencies that any other human group has, right? Why did immigrants vote for Trump? Because immigrants, just like women, just like anyone else, are susceptible to fear, are
Mhm.
susceptible to tribalism, and they're susceptible to wanting to keep things the way that they are. I think about the long history of very poor men buying into patriarchy because at least, hey, listen, they didn't have power economically, they didn't have power at the workplace, but god damn it, when they went home, they had power over a woman, they
Mm,
had power over someone. And I think that when it comes to how white supremacy motivates white women, at least they're above someone within the hierarchy.
mm. Yeah, the
Um,
proximity to
yeah.
power.
But just like
Yeah.
with immigrants who voted for Trump, oh, but he's not talking about me. I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah, what's that about? How do people think they're like somehow the exception to everything? Like a friend of mine was telling me her dad owns a construction company and her brother works for the construction company. They both voted for Trump. She did not. Didn't you guys think about the fact that literally all of your labor comes from immigrants who are basically trafficked here to work for you, and they've had to hide them from ICE for weeks? What? And
Also, you're going to get
somehow
more
they're,
contracts with the liberal government. You're going to get more construction projects with the liberal government.
it's, ah! It's like,
Yeah.
why? What is going on? It's so bizarre. Let's talk about, okay.
Well, hey man,
I
women
don't think I
women
let you finish
yeah, yeah.
that
But
thought,
women
but
aren't immune to wanting to feel better than other people too, right? It's not just a
right,
man thing. It's mostly a man
right.
thing, but it's not just a man thing. And oh my God, how do I put this? So I also don't want us to lose sight of the fact that there's a lot of people that voted for Trump as an anti-incumbency thing,
Right.
right? It's just a lazy-minded throughout the world, whether it was a
Hmm.
right-leaning or left-leaning government, incumbent governments have crashed hard since the pandemic because of
Hmm.
inflation.
Right.
And it's very easy to just blame the people in power than it is to have an actual nuanced understanding of why inflation happens. And
Right.
frankly, the Democrats did fail to crack down on the corporate price gouging. When Kamala Harris was at her most popular was when she was talking about getting rid of the corporate price gougers of our groceries.
Hmm.
Imagine if she, and housing as well, to a certain extent. When she
Yeah.
abandoned that, she never recovered in the polls. And the fact that Biden didn't protect us hurt the Democrats, and it hurt us. And
Hmm.
that's because he's way too conservative. But that's a different story and a different guest, I'm sure. Okay, another thing is that women benefit from patriarchy sometimes. You married someone that has good money, or you are the daughter of someone who has good money, the progressives aren't going to let you inherit as much of your Nepo baby money as the conservatives will. The conservatives feed your ego when it comes to that, saying that you are superior because of your wealth and your status. And the Elons of the world would think that their blood is superior, like those feudal lords, as if we're
Yep.
living in the year 800 or something.
Yeah. Techno feudalism is
Yes. Well, that's what
another thing.
libertarianism's end goal is, man. The
Mm.
libertarianism's end goal is like one company dominates a town. It's the company town thing that we had in the
Yeah.
late 19th century. Um,
That went well.
yeah, that was great. That was great.
That's why we kept it. Again, why do we have to relearn the same lessons again and again with these people?
I
Ah!
I just wish our schools would teach it though. Like our schools are so wanting to
Hmm.
be neutral, and the media plays into this too. The media has such a right-wing bias, even CNN and ABC and NBC and all the main broadcast ones, because they have to bend over backwards to appear to be neutral, not
Mm.
objective, which is what they should be. Objectivity,
Right.
I like the sports analogy, which is the San Diego Padres played the Los Angeles Dodgers today. The an objective report would say that the Dodgers won 5-2. A neutral report would say the Padres said that they won 6-3, and the Dodgers said they won 7-0.
Uh,
You see which one's
yeah.
better, and so often corporate media goes with the neutrality one because they don't want to alienate their largely older and more conservative audience.
Mm.
And
But
if they had just taught in schools, the conservatives were the pro-slavery people. The conservatives opposed the New Deal, which got us out of the Great Depression and created the modern American middle class. The conservatives were the ones who were the most pro-Hitler. The conservatives were the ones who fought for the British. The conservatives were the ones that fought against the creation of the Bill of Rights and were the ones that fought against the Bill of Rights applying to the states. The minimum wage, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, everything good that we've ever done in this society was because progressives and the left pushed it, and it was all
mhm.
opposed by conservatives. If we taught that in schools, how much better of a society would we have? But we're so obsessed with being neutral and not having a liberal
Yeah.
bias.
Which is so interesting because you say that and that's true. And yet the story that's spun is, oh, everything is so woke and liberal that Trump needs to take over the Kennedy Center. What? It's like appoint himself as chair. Even the art isn't allowed to be accurate or
That's the thing with
truthful.
fascism. It was the thing
But
under Stalin's regime. You got to make art that's beneficial to the state.
mhm, yeah. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is a lot of this in terms of media is really okay, we have to pander to the largest audience. And right now we have boomers. And also at the same time, what we know is that in this generation, in the next decade or so, there will be the biggest wealth transfer from boomers to
Us.
millennials, I guess, right? Or Gen whatever are
X,
not
Z.
boomers.
Blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
all of it. All of the above. Non-boomers. And eventually, boomers will no longer be living. So in a way, mm, it feels like a lot of this conservatism from a historical perspective is like boomers who are attached to the way things used to be, this perceived nostalgia bias of when I was young, this is the way it was, and things were much more black and white. Meanwhile, it's, yeah, when you were young, you couldn't even have a credit card. You were literally property still. Shut up, old
And
white woman.
of
Like,
course,
what are you talking about?
I just want to
Yeah.
butt in because they're talking about the
Yeah.
social dynamics mostly, right? But what about in the 50s when the upper echelon tax rate was 91%? How about from
Exactly.
1933 until Reagan in 1981, the taxes on the richest Americans never fell below 70%. Never once fell below 70%. They were at 94% under Franklin Roosevelt for a few years. How about how we built
Mhm.
millions of homes for first-time home buyers? Dude, have you seen like the cost of rent before Reagan?
No, I
It's
haven't.
crazy. Okay, so we did this with my mom's apartment. Okay, my mom
Uh-huh.
went to UCSD. She lived in La Jolla. For those that don't know, La Jolla is like a richy rich white people area of San Diego County. Okay, she had a one bedroom apartment overlooking the beach.
Mm.
It would be like $2,500 to $3,000 in today's money. Do you know what her
Mhm.
rent was back then? We inflation adjusted it, by the way. Inflation adjusted. What was her rent?
What?
$510.
Wow.
$510. Imagine paying that for rent, and your minimum wage is the equivalent of 25 bucks an hour in today's dollars.
But that's not changed
Yeah,
since I don't know when.
pre-Obama.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very long time. And even that, it's if you have a job, like if you have a job that pays tips and your minimum wage is technically lower
Oh,
and all
yeah.
these things, that's a whole issue too. Like, where did that come from? We could talk about that.
hmm
Um,
But if I may,
yeah.
why don't they acknowledge all of these obvious progressive policies that led to their economic well-being? Let's be specific. These were mostly
Hmm.
for white men,
Hmm.
obviously, all of these economic things. Now, it trickled down to white women because of marriage. But with that caveat aside, why won't they acknowledge it? It's ego. They want to
Hmm.
believe that they did it all by myself, okay? Because that's what American
Mm,
culture teaches you, particularly even more back then. And
yeah.
so you have to go against the culture, you have to question the narratives that you were told, and you have to lower your ego. Most people
Mm,
aren't going to do that.
impossible.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to ask
Impossible.
if like we're going to get more conservative with time, because that's something I haven't made a video about on social media, just YouTube.
No, I was thinking the opposite. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe there's hope that, but now all of this weird manosphere,
Yes.
bro oligarchy shit
Thoughts
that's
on this?
emerging in the younger generations,
Yeah.
that's concerning more than
Very.
anything.
Have you ever
Because
noticed
there
this?
is this sort of hope that, okay, when boomers are out, we get to be in the halls of Congress legislating. I get to hire you for my campaign strategy to figure out how do we actually speak to the things that really matter for people and outdo the whole messaging strategy that Trump just pulled off, like using actual data, which I also wonder because I've watched a couple documentaries and looked at things about this and his platform and messaging and stuff. Like, I feel like there had to be someone who plays your role in the mix, but for but without a conscience.
But evil.
But evil. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, there have to be,
Um,
dude. The people on
there's
the
gotta
right, they are
be.
brilliant with messaging, dude. The fact that
Yeah.
they have most people thinking that they're the pro-freedom, better economic
Yes,
side is like unbelievable.
it's unbelievable because it's so
Wrong?
unfactual.
So
Like,
wrong.
it's so wrong and it's
Yeah.
so bizarre. And like, what? Yeah,
I have a few
all of
things.
that.
So
But
first off,
yeah.
a lot of the far right people, like
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes, are you familiar with this lovely individual?
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Big
your body
fan.
by choice guy.
No, kidding.
Anyway,
Not a big fan.
oh, what's funny about Nick Fuentes, by the way, is that he's like a fake Catholic, but he has a cat boy lover, so that's fun. There's like a closeted gay
What?
self-hatred aspect. Yeah,
Cat boy? What's
cat boy.
that?
He's a cat boy sex worker.
What is that? I
He
don't
wears
even
cat
understand
ears.
what you're.
He wear his
Oh,
little boyfriend. He wears cat
what?
ears. Yeah, they had an 8 hour
I
stream
didn't know
together where
that's
they
a
go to the mall
thing.
and all that. Yeah, Nick Fuentes, closet gay, self hatred, a lot of interesting things going on there with individual psychology. But one of oh no, I just lost my train of thought talking about Nick Fuentes. No,
Damn it, Nick Fuentes.
I know, right? I'll
Were
get
you
it
going to
back.
talk about how
I want to talk about how
on
sexism
this?
has changed, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really weird how sexism has changed. Uh,
Uh-huh.
what was the Nick Fuentes point? Oh my God, come on, Keegan. Thank God you have editing.
Yeah.
This is what I do when I'm filming too. I'll just be like filming.
You're
I'll just sit
lucky.
there for 3 minutes and I'll have my script there, but I'm like, how do I say this better? Oh my God, what were you saying before? No.
Oh, we were talking about the younger generation
Yes.
of like how the right's messaging has infiltrated like and influenced younger people and becoming more conservative versus more liberal as we progress in the next 20, 30, 50 years in this country, I
Yeah, what
think.
we're seeing is this interesting polarization where people there's fewer people in the center, particularly slightly conservative people. The right is being
Mm.
really concentrated within the authoritarian far, and then
Yeah.
people on the left are being increasingly progressive. And this
Mm.
is the dichotomy between are you insecurity fear driven and you're going to go to that extreme because you're going to go down the right wing rabbit hole
Right.
in media. And if you're on the left and you're intellectually curious, you want to know more about the world, you have more information at your disposal than any humans have ever had in the history of ever. We're seeing this polarization, but one of the one of the interesting things I'm seeing is a changing in sexism. I was talking with my mom
Mm.
about this because few decades ago, and for a long time, sexism was like pat on the head, condescending. Oh, look at the woman. Do blah blah.
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience are familiar with this crap, but
Yeah.
what's happening now is it's like increasingly hate driven. Like, I'm not trying to say that people in the 50s weren't hating on women, like deep seated problems, but like it seems to be much more prevalent within sexism now. And part of that is because there's
Mm.
just fewer ordinary sexists,
Yeah.
right? There's obviously a lot of passive sexism, but there's not the same head pat, oh, the woman can't do what I can do BS. And an increasing share of the sexisms is just hate, man. It's crazy how the insecurities of young men are being manipulated for this because there have always been loser men. But
Hmm.
in the past, like when women were more financially dependent on men, like you were saying, back before women could have a fucking credit card. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Couldn't have a credit card, you couldn't own property, like crazy. And the Nick Fuenteses of the world would rather us live in a Great Depression era style economics if it means putting women in their place and hurting black and brown people.
Hmm.
There, I brought Nick Fuentes full circle. I did it.
Yay. Yeah. And it's like the cruelty is the point. And a lot
Yes.
of times the, it's very interesting because it's also like coming back to that hypocrisy thread. It's the projection of it all, right? It's what's the word I'm looking for?
Can I help fill in the blank right here?
Yes.
It's
Every
I'm in
something is an
pain.
admission.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Accusation
every
is an
accusation is
admission.
admission of guilt. Yeah. When you're pointing the finger, you got three pointed right back at you. It's the I'm in pain. But I'm not at fault because I'm too weak to handle that. It's me. I'm the loser. It's my fault. I need to get better as a person. That would require
Hmm.
work and effort, some ego destructive views,
Self-awareness.
right? Some
Yeah.
self-awareness, yes. Yes, and courage. It would take a lot of
Hmm.
courage, but no, it's obviously somebody else's fault. Going back to the OG book on political psychology of the authoritarian personality, one of the symptoms of right-wing authoritarianism is scapegoating.
Mm.
Right? The
Hmm.
irony of these people saying, you're going to take personal responsibility, and they never take it themselves. Right? So it's, I'm in
Yeah.
pain. I don't have the self awareness or the courage to admit that it's my fault and that I have agency within my own life to fix these things as hard as systems are making it on me. Another thing you have to have courage to question the systems. No,
Hmm.
it's those fault. These people make me feel bad, so I want them to feel bad. It's like
Mm.
a fundamental hopelessness. It's beyond cynicism. It's like hopelessness that they can be happy, and so they just want other people.
Suffering.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just want suffering. Misery loves company, but suffering loves company more, almost for these
very well
folks.
put. Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary. So do you think based on everything that you know and have read, where are we going, and like how do we course correct this?
Hmm.
And none of us really know, and there's so many factors to consider and so many variables, but what are your thoughts?
So I
How do
gotta
we
say,
remedy this?
I'm sure a lot of people will connect with what I'm about to say. This recent election got me a lot more worried.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could go back to 2008 when the Democrats wiped the floor with the Republicans, and it felt like we're going to be progressive forever because we've made a turning point. We elected a black guy with a Muslim name. Are you serious? Like, really? He's talking about hope and change. We elected this dude?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, he did not bring that about. But it seemed, wow, we're going to be progressive forever. These young millennials, they just voted in record numbers. Oh my God, we've made a turning point in America. We're going to be progressive forever. And now it feels the same way, right? It's, oh my God, we just
Mm-hmm.
elected Trump a second time. He's going to make democracy less democracy. And what I'm really scared of is the media. If you look
Mm-hmm.
at the streams that were most popular on election night, they were all right wing. And the reason is because, let me put it this way, I've got a little over 100,000 followers in my first year between TikTok and Instagram. If I was right wing, I would already be raking in that right wing sugar daddy money. I would already have investors. I would be able to do this full time, nothing else in my life, no other attempt at making money. No, no it would keep me whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same on the left. Part of that is because
Right.
the Democratic Party does not fund us. Part of that is the Democratic Party doesn't even engage with us. Trump went on all those podcasts. Kamala didn't go on any left wing equivalents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is because the right wing podcasts will not question their dear leaders, but the left wing ones will actually give you a bit of a hard time, right? Because we care about facts and journalism a little bit more. And the fact is that if you're on the left, you're much more likely to be working paycheck to paycheck. So it's harder to actually start this kind of a thing. I would have started this right after college if I'd had the money. And so right now, I'd say one of the biggest things we need to do is we need to start funding our lefty content. Okay. Like you need to, everyone listening, please budget 5, 10, 20 bucks to support a lefty content creator, especially if they're like on the margins, right? Like Hassan Piker, he's huge. He doesn't need your money. The Young Turks, they probably don't need any more of your money, but we could use it a little bit more probably.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do the Bernie style grassroots funding of our media, we're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all that pessimism aside, I'm actually largely optimistic because, as I was saying earlier, there are just fewer people that are slightly conservative. And if we get somebody to motivate the left to come out and vote, this is what Democrats really suck at since Obama led to the disappointment and disillusionment of millions of voters by not acting boldly enough, by not fighting the Republicans enough. But that's a different story. The reason why Kamala Harris lost is not because Trump got more voters. It's because fewer voters came out and voted for Democrats. And it's because people are sick of the establishment. It's because people want a populist. And unfortunately, that was not the candidate that we had. As intelligent, as
Mm-hmm.
well spoken as she is not the kind of person that can win in today's time. If the Democrats can turn that around, then there is a lot of hope because there's more of us than there are of them. And it's the gap is increasing, right? Again, fewer
Mm-hmm.
slightly conservative people, and the right by having to go so far right will eventually alienate enough people. The question is, can the
Mm-hmm.
Democrats motivate us to come out and vote for them? Because it's really a turnout game. Looking down the line, people's political views are actually pretty stable across time. There is a slight shift towards conservatism, but it's not something we can't overcome. And it's actually happening less for our generation, in part because we don't have the same kind of property ownership and because of the internet, because we have more
Mm-hmm.
access to information than ever before. But that's being corrupted because there's so much money in right wing media. So
Mm-hmm.
we should have a lot of hope that the progressive views of our generation will stay stable across time. And I think we have a very optimistic future. The real question is we're going to come to a point where it's like capitalism is going to become outdated, just like
Mm-hmm.
feudalism became outdated, just like mercantile capitalism became outdated. And do we take a fascist turn? Do we become more like China? Do we become more like the business oligarchy, tech feudalism? or do we become much more progressive? And I'm talking more progressive than any country is today. I think those are basically the two end paths.
Mm.
Where are we going to
Hmm.
go? I don't know. But climate change is going to make it all much more difficult. Climate change will be like the
Right.
make or break, right? We will either live in fear, we will live in a zero sum game mindset, and we will go more authoritarian and we'll children of men, but real life, or we will step up as a species and we'll go the progressive direction. And I don't really know which way we're going to go. It's so hard to say
Hmm.
how much fear climate change will ratchet up.
Yeah, that's true. But the fear that's ratcheted up from that, wouldn't that drive people actually, like, ironically, typically conservatives are driven by fear, but they also deny reality. Wouldn't that drive more people left because there would have to be more regulation and progress and innovation and things in that direction?
Yeah. I made a whole video on this. The sad reality
Ooh,
is that
okay.
tough economic times do not make us more progressive. I know it's so
Mm,
easy to look at the one example where that happened, which was the Great Depression,
mm,
where the conservative government was in power, their giant tax cuts for rich people and corporate deregulation led to a bubble and the economic crash happened. If you can imagine in a country where those circumstances happen, and I think a
they
lot of,
might
they
right
probably
now.
will. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing we have hope for is that there's just enough anti-incumbency people
Yeah.
and that hopefully we get a sympathetic administration. Those are really the
Mhm.
two key ingredients. We need someone like, I don't know, Jon Stewart or somebody. That's the one I'm
I
hoping for right now.
Me too. I've been thinking
Yeah.
about that a lot. I've been thinking about him and AOC on a ticket,
Oh,
and I
yes.
think that could be sweet victory. But I'm also wondering from your perspective, who is that sort of perfect
Mm.
candidate? Like what qualities do they have to have, or what is that sort of like sweet spot in the messaging? Because I think we're seeing a lot of things that's okay, that worked, but that didn't work. And we this whole sort of backlash on an Obama being elected, right? And then this sort of
The last
ratcheting
gasp
up
of the
of the
50s white man.
exactly, and
Yeah.
this sort of extinction burst theory that maybe this is the last breath and it's just like clinging on for its existence of this old way and this like things we actually know never actually work, but there's a nostalgia bias toward that.
Or
Um,
they work for certain people.
right.
Yeah.
Very limited. Yeah.
So I think Jon Stewart is perfect for a number of reasons, right? There's the obvious, like, he's not going to be subject to as much racism and sexism. He's not going to be
Right.
subject to the anti youth bias.
Mm,
AOC is smarter than what, 99.9% of the American population. She's more mature than 99.9% of the American population, right? But people will look at her and she has a very youthful energy and a very youthful
mm,
look to her. And because of that, people will just not take her as seriously. On top of the racism and sexism problem. She
mm.
is my most preferred person to be the president
Yeah.
because I think she could be truly historically great. This
Mhm.
generation's Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt, what have you. Problem is electability, and you need as many people in the Congress as possible. I think Jon Stewart is the perfect intersection of anti-establishment, truth teller, can talk like a real person. He doesn't talk like a scripted person. By the way, all
Yep.
three of these things are true of AOC as well. And
Yep.
he has a long history of calling out both sides, which is important to your independent voters and your
Hmm.
not always showing up to vote voters. There's got to
Hmm.
be a way better way that's not so clunky of saying that. But and Jon Stewart has generationally great communicative abilities. He's got
Hmm.
charm, he's got charisma, he's got a way of distilling something
Humor,
complicated.
obviously.
Oh God, the
Yeah.
humor. You can't not have the humor. And he's got a
Yeah.
celebrity status and name recognition. Frankly, that's the country we live in, right?
Yep.
For the past however many years it's been, we are a celebrity driven culture. And Instagram probably hasn't made that any better.
Right. And I think he could actually push us forward in a big way with a lot of
Yes.
these things that have been maybe unpopular or have faced a lot of backlash from conservatives in the past. Like the timing of whatever's about to happen, like bursting things, like there is we are in like a destruction cycle.
Yes.
And so whatever comes in and whoever comes in and whatever policies come in, after this era, whatever that looks like, hopefully it is just 4 years and not any longer. I think that is a really ripe like territory because we can say we have more leverage. We can say all of those ideas, we just enacted them. Look what happened. Now it's new. Here we go. And I think we're actually really close to that moment that has felt really far off for a long time. What you were saying earlier about either we're going to go this way or we're going to go that way. I think I'm
The turning point is
delusionally
nigh.
hopeful. I'm like nauseously optimistic, right? Like the idea that maybe this will be that like last breath of whatever this shit is, this like over capitalized patriarchal exploitative model for how a society is run, where there's just massive inequality and inequity throughout, and it's built on those principles, like built on slavery, built on
Patriarchy,
like all of
capitalism.
it, like
Yeah.
exploitation of people and
Yes.
labor and women's labor and slave labor and migrant labor and all of this stuff. This is what I think we all need to be focusing on. Yes, participate in the resistance and start building a vision of what actually is possible and thinking about like where are we going next, because we need to be prepared. Like we need to hit the ground running and actually change things, get things in, legislate well, have policies that are generally populist, but also that are not just a reaction and a response to whatever the other side has done. We need to
Yes.
be visionary. We need to be innovative. We need to envision where we want this to go in the next 100 years, 250 years. Like we need that long-term vision. And I don't think we have it.
No.
That's a big reason why we lost as well. There was no, like, we didn't
Vision, you're
give
right.
people something to sink their teeth
Yes.
into. And in anything, while I do think government shouldn't necessarily be run like a business because it's not the same machine, it doesn't serve the same purpose. Essentially, in a political campaign and for a political party, those we do need to use business practices there, like marketing and messaging and vision. We need actual vision for what this party, what we're selling to people, like for in exchange for their votes and their support. And we didn't have that
Yeah,
at
nothing will
all.
fundamentally
The
change as a
fumble.
message is really bad when most people are angry and
Yeah.
hurting. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree with so much of what you're saying. I think part of what America has lost, just in the
Yeah.
lifetimes of our parents, is a vision for this country, something to strive for, something we're going for. We're going to go to the moon. We don't have that anymore.
Right.
Now it's we're going to hurt this
Mars.
group. Oh God.
I
No, not even that. Come on.
don't like it.
By the way, you're free to steal Last Gasp of the 50s, white man. You're free to steal that. Where I really agree with you on is we need to do more than just, oh, we're gonna fix the errors of the last one. You need to
Yeah.
go bold and beyond. This country has voted for change so many elections in a row. We voted for Obama. He was the hope and change candidate. We voted for Obama a second time, though not as many people because he was the more change candidate, but he
Mm-hmm.
was less changed than he was before, so we got fewer votes, which is actually not always common when somebody's running for re-election as the president. It's actually quite
Mm-hmm.
common. Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, they got more votes for re-election than they did their first election. Trump was a change candidate. Then we voted for Biden, who, yes, he said nothing will fundamentally change, but God damn it, let's get this other guy out of the White House. And then we voted for change again in 2024. Different kinds of change, obviously, but this country wants something big and in a different direction. And the
Mm-hmm.
Democrats will motivate millions of people if they are able to harness the Bernie Sanders energy, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is another reason
Yep.
why Jon Stewart would be a great candidate, is because he can appeal to the mainstream liberals, even the NIMBY liberals, right? But he can also get the Bernie people out to do the
Mm-hmm.
activism. And if you can get that combination, oh boy. you're ticketed to success right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it needs to come with a big change. It's great that Biden was the most pro-union president since the 70s. Is that saying
Hmm.
much? No. Unfortunately,
No.
he can be very pro-union, but the rate of unionization in America actually went down by 0.4% under Joe
Mm.
Biden. So he might have been
Hmm.
the greatest union president of the past several decades, but how much did that affect people already in unions that already have a contract? Not that much. How much did that affect
Right.
non-unionized workers? Not at all. So what the Democrats
Hmm.
really need to do is do universal programs. We need
Right.
something to bring down the cost of housing in the entire country, for example. We need a
Hmm.
jobs program to build green energy. This kind of fundamental, I can see this in my life. It's not just $70 more a year in my tax returns. No, I'm talking big, sink my teeth into it kind of change.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
student debt is gone would be a fundamental change to my life and the lives of
Right.
millions of people.
Yeah.
Get
Something
it
you
done.
can feel in your
Yes.
everyday life. Exactly. And I
Feel is
think
the
that's
operative
what,
word.
yes, because what we were talking about at the beginning is
So
that we
literally
don't
everything.
form these, yeah, because we don't form our political beliefs based on logic and fact and data. We form it based on emotion. And I think that is something, yeah, like change you can see and feel is important in whatever message, platform, agenda is rolled out next from Democrats. And I feel like they're scrambling a little bit. Like I don't know that I'm not seeing anybody who's like bringing that forth. I think
Yep.
what we have right now is like people who can fight this opposition. But really, when it comes down to it, it's like there's not a lot of people in there who are young and spry and have a future in the Democratic Party and what it means moving forward. And I think
So,
that's what I'm excited about because I'm like, put me in.
yeah, God, for real.
Let's
Please,
go.
please. And the reason is why, or the question is why. And the answer
Mhm.
is because if you're a rich donor, what kind of Democrat do you want? What kind of Democrat are you going to fund in the primary elections? Because so often the primary elections come down to progressive, genuine person that wants to help people and corporate funded candidate. They're going to invest. They're not going to try to bribe people. It's way easier to just invest in people that already agree with you. The greatest thing that corporations ever did for themselves, it's not by the Republican Party. Republican Party's been bought since 1910. What they did was they bought half the Democratic Party and they fund that half of the Democratic Party. And it's those people that have the big contradiction of they're there because of their donors. So they're not there to serve the voters. And they want to keep the AOCs out of power as much as possible because then they'll lose control of the party, which means they lose control of not only all the ego stuff of being in control, but that's their
Mhm.
money train.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
that these upper tier Democrats care about anyone other than themselves? Their actions don't indicate that, right? It's just like the
It's
narcissism expert
unfortunate.
you had on a couple of
Yeah.
podcasts ago. Look at their actions, not just their words. And they don't
Yes.
want the AOCs in power. We have to force them to have the AOCs in power.
Hmm. Yeah. And a lot of them, like when I look at the Democratic Party right now in the Senate and the House, they're like old. Like they
Oh
should
God,
be
I know, right?
retiring. Like I love Bernie. Keep him in as long as we can.
Yes.
Like who's being mentored by him to be able to carry forth that legacy? You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
that ideological legacy. Is there someone who he's closely working with to help them learn the ropes? Or is that happening? Because if it's not happening in the party, it
Yeah.
cannot hinge on your life or death. You
This
gotta
also gets to a
carry that
fundamental
through.
assumption that a lot of the older Democrats have, which is that they came of age during Reagan, and so
Mm,
they have this mindset. Nancy Pelosi is a great example of this. They have the mindset that America's a right-wing country. Whenever Democrats win, it's a fluke, and we have to cater to the right wing because they
mm,
have median voter theorem brain. You know what the median voter theorem is, right? Does
not
everyone know
really.
what that
No, I
is?
haven't
Okay.
heard that.
The
No.
median voter theorem is like politics 101 stupid brain thinking, which is imagine a number line.
Hmm.
Negative,
So it's sort of like the Overton window,
yes,
but
yes,
in the middle.
yes. There's 10 to the left, 10 points to the right, and zeros in the middle. Donald Trump is running at 9 out of 10 to the right because he's not literally Hitler or Genghis Khan or something. So he's 9 out of 10 to the right.
Not
Therefore,
yet.
yeah, not yet. Therefore, in order to win, the Democrats should be 5 to the right because they'll capture everyone that's 5 to the right and over. So that's
Okay.
their thinking. The problem is that requires 100% voter turnout. And that
Right.
100% of people vote based off of who is ideologically similar to them rather than who makes them feel good, which is mostly how people
Or,
vote.
right. Or even just their sense of belonging
Yeah.
or identity,
Great point.
which is
We
more
haven't mentioned
likely,
conformity. This is something I
right?
need to make a video on, which is a lot of people stick with the right because this is what their family and friends believe in. They don't actually believe in anything. They just want to be
Yeah.
liked by the people around them. So when people
Right.
ask me, what is the way to turn someone from the left to the right or the right to the left? Two different answers. How do you turn a liberal into a conservative? You make them afraid. There
Mm,
were actually studies on this after 9/11. When you reminded people of the horror of 9/11, they became more conservative. Fear makes people
makes
more
sense.
conservative. How do you make
Yeah.
somebody more progressive? You change their social circle. You make them want to fit in with progressive people. So
Mm.
there is no argument. There's no way to change how they feel. The gross truth is the way that you get conservatives to not be so conservative is to be nice and friendly with them, to associate, to be someone that they can trust on a personal level, then they'll trust your views.
Mm.
Unfortunately, they'll probably go back right into their echo chamber and then they'll have the same stupid brain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
thinking is like this short-term drug that wears off. It's very frustrating.
Oh my gosh. I am so grateful for this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we'll link all of your links and all the things that all the places people can plug in with you and learn more about you on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube in the show notes. But is there anything else that you've got going on? Anywhere you'd like people to come hang with you and learn
Sure.
more?
The name Keegan Tatum, it's not exactly ordinary. So if you can't remember that, just type in hashtag political psychology anywhere and you'll find me, I'm sure. TikTok is the most up-to-date one. I do a live stream a couple times a month there, sometime
Oh,
on a weekend
awesome.
day. All I do is just answer people's questions. And then you can also look up the YouTube, which is also Keegan Tatum. Again, hashtag political psychology. While that one's not as up to date on the little short videos, it does have longer form videos such as why are older people more conservative? Why the psychology of it, the psychology of transphobia, a long video on that, and that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you again. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope that this conversation was fun and valuable and insightful for you, just as much as it was for us, because I feel like we had a really good time.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me on, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to come on. And for everyone listening, I will talk to you again on next week's episode.
Keep your mind wide open, keep your soul aligned. You've got all the answers waiting there inside. You're not alone. Take a throne like nobody's business, like nobody's business.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Like Nobody's Business. So, what did you think? I hope you found this episode absolutely enlivening. If you loved it, I'd be so grateful if you'd help me spread the word by sharing this episode with a friend or a loved one you know would feel supported and encouraged by this too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you won't miss an episode. It's also infinitely helpful to me and to my team if you take a moment to rate and review the podcast so that other trailblazers like you can find this resource, know it exists, and step out of struggle and into more ease. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today and for taking this space to receive nourishment for your greatest vision. And in case no one told you this today, you are wildly brilliant, beautifully wise, and radically trustworthy. Keep shining your light so that all of those who need what you're here to share with our world can see, feel, and experience your unique medicine. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Nobody's business, like nobody's business.